Alright people, so last Tuesday they revealed the one, the only, the best Fire Island chain was coming back, and this Tuesday they gave us a bit of an update on a few different things, but most importantly, we got a trailer. So today we're going to check out this trailer. We're going to go in a frame by frame. I've got my magic awesome pen tool here as well, so we can do some awesome drawings and some sweet maths, as you guys know I'm so good at. Let's get into the trailer. I want to give you guys a frame by frame, and we're going to see exactly what is here, because there are a couple of surprising little moments. So let's do it.
I have been reborn.
He absorbed the Bloodstone's power.
After the coming battle, I hope any of us are still breathing. What's happening to the island?
The swell of magic will cause a cataclysmic eruption.
I didn't think we'd be dealing with another dragon so soon.
Oh my god, it's a good one, right? Oh my gosh. So many people still expect them to do those little teasers, but no, when they do a proper trailer, they've been doing very, very well. Okay, it was hard to contain my excitement and not blab out during the middle of that. So let's get started, let's rewind to the beginning, and let's go moment by moment, shall we? So the epic music kicks in, we get the Living World logo. First shot is of Lazarus here, as you can see, and that's kind of what the trailer opens with. Nothing too special, nothing too important right now. This is just a recap of what happened in the last Living Worlds section. Massive spoilers, really, if you think about it. If you haven't played episode 1, this sudden reveal of Lazarus there in-game is quite big. But so they reveal a little bit of Lazarus, and they tell us, oh, an old enemy has returned. That would be him. That's kind of funny text to me, by the way, that they decide, oh, an old enemy has returned. Because really, okay, he wasn't a very well-known old enemy. I mean, everyone in Guild Wars 2 now knows a lot about him and now talks about him a lot. But it wasn't that uncommon to find someone who played Eye of the North, where Lazarus was introduced to us, and had no idea who the damn guy was. And they kind of undermined his story a little bit in Guild Wars 1 as well, because the idea was, oh, he's the last Messart, blah, 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 blah. And then the Civil War came out in Kryta, and we had tons of other Messart running around, though none of them ever referenced or seemed to care about Lazarus' existence. So, but whatever, it is true, an old enemy has returned. I'm just nitpicking there, really, more than anything else. Let's keep rolling.
The Bloodstone's power.
So they talk a little bit about the Bloodstone there. Obviously, that's going to be a continuing part of the plot, and I think what they've done here is actually quite clever, because in the audio, they told us a little bit about the Bloodstone, and in the visual, through the text, they're immediately also telling us about Primordus. The fire dragon stirs. What's funny as well about the specific wording here is not just, oh, think about the Bloodstone, think about the dragon, and then combine those things together, which is probably going to be a lot of this season, the defining parts of this season. But also they say the dragon stirs. Now, why is the dragon stirring kind of an interesting wording? Because that is exactly the wording they used when they were describing Primordus back in Eye of the North, when he truly did first stir. The word was, the line was, Primordus stirs but does not awake, right? Because we, the heroes, stop him from doing that. Well, we know he's been awake for a while. I think they've got a few things to answer for like why he's been awake but not doing very much. But so we shall see. If he's still only at the stage of stirring right now, that's not too threatening, is it? Really? And finally, we get something new here, 16 seconds in. This is not an area you should recognize. This, guys, is the Fire Island chain itself. Again, I wonder whether that press we had last week were people who had seen this trailer or whether they'd seen a little bit more. So we have some kind of a cave entrance, obviously, right here. And I guess we'll be able to explore in it. But the other thing that quite strikes me here are two things. Number one, obviously we've already had volcanic landscapes in Guild Wars before. We had Fireheart Rise, we had certain elements, even in the jungle, in Heart of Thorns, we had places like Mount Maelstrom primarily. And it's interesting that they're doing the Fire Island chain, because what I was wondering is, are they just going to copy all those assets that they had there and just duplicate them over? Because then what you could end up having is a new region being added to the game that feels an awful lot like places we've already been. The same kind of lava, cover, the same kind of skyboxes that they're using. If you guys pay close attention, the Mount Maelstrom meta event, when it triggers, they change all the sky to be all fiery, and that was totally appropriate for the Fire Island chain too. But what I think we're actually seeing on this trailer, which is good, is these are slightly different textures and shapes and things to the rocks. So I think they have gone the whole horse, and they've made like a whole new set of stuff, which is excellent. There's also something else, probably more interesting than what I just rambled about, that is also interesting here, and that is a new post-processing effect we're seeing on screen. Is this just for the trailer or not? I don't know. I've seen no discussion about it, but my keen eye has caught it. Let's play it back, and I'm going to play the whole shot just so you guys can see it in movement, in motion. There you go, that's the cave, and now we're on to the next shot. So the post-processing effect we're looking at, number one is a little bit of ash flitting about on the screen, maybe, or that's just the effect from the text. But here, look, we actually have some lens flare. Guild Wars 2 does not natively do lens flare. It's never done that. We have a bit of grain on the screen. That's not a thing that we've ever seen. Now, you can do that through post-processing injectors like Reshade, Gem Effects, Sweet Effects, and so forth, but this is native there, or it's something they put into the video. I don't know. Does that mean we might be getting new engine update that adds some of this other stuff? Finally goes back and looks at their shoddy implementation of post-processing, their awful native bloom settings and all that kind of stuff. That would be really, really, really interesting if they did. Or it's just there to look a bit flashy. Maybe you guys can decide for yourselves. Moving on to the next shot, we have a jade armor or a jade bow, one of those two. We can't actually see what he's wielding, so I don't think it's really possible. But this jade construct, at the very least, these we already saw a little bit of in the previous patch, and I'd already speculated on the channel that we'd see these in this episode, and I'm really happy we are. Now, why is that? Because we're going to the Fire Island chain, guys. This is a place where the Massart once upon a time were. And as we've seen that the White Mantle did in episode 1, the White Mantle went through old Massart territories and they busted into them and reignited some of their old technology that was laying dormant, like the Jade constructs. In fact, the White Mantle supercharged them. So now we're dealing with the Fire Island chain, another of these locations where there used to be lots of Massart and now there aren't any. Is the idea that this guy has always been active and he's just wandered around alone on the Fire Island chain for years, uncontested, maybe just by other dragon minions or something that's gone there? Or is the idea that the White Mantle are now here and they've started activating these ones too? So this is suggestive, perhaps, that the White Mantle are going to be in this next update. There's nothing else, as far as I remember, in this trailer that does suggest the White Mantle will be in this patch, but this suggests they might be. Either that, or they just wander around the damn place, being bosses. And don't forget, these are pretty dangerous, pretty deadly things, especially in Guild Wars 2. So, pretty nice. Also, obviously, you've got the background. You've got this kind of lava fall down there. That reminds me of the new Desert Borderlands to an extent. Just a pretty sweet shot, and a Bloodstone Shard by its feet as well. Take note of that. They did reveal in the story that you need the Bloodstone Shards to power these constructs, and it's nice to see that going forward a little bit more. Man, is he in the shots of the Fire Island chain? Gonna be so pumped. Okay, moving on. Moving on. Next shot. Oh my god, okay. This is probably my favorite shot. This is probably my favorite moment of the trailer. Right. So I'm currently filming a series for you guys back in Guild Wars 1 showing off the Fire Island chain. If you're a little out of the loop, we're going to a region that was once upon a time explorable 250 years ago in the predecessor to Guild Wars 2, okay? And when you were there, you saw a variety of monsters, a variety of big, bad, deadly creatures, and one of those, of a great many actually, that I hope we do see, was this guy, okay? Fire worms. I saw a comment on Reddit, someone was saying, oh, this kind of sucks. I don't like that they're just doing another elemental type of worm. And it is true that Guild Wars 2 has used this kind of worm model and this screaming animation and the worm assets an awful lot, but this has so much precedent in lore. These things were freaking badass. The worms were some of the coolest enemies in the original release at Prophecies, and yeah, there were fiery ones on the Fire Island chain. This is not something they've just thrown in there because they think it looks cool. They've done it because it looks cool and it has a lot of precedent. So, and funnily enough as well, when I first heard last week we were going to be going to the Fire Island chain, I began thinking about stuff like the Hydras and some of these other creatures like the obsidian drakes and things that once upon a time were on the Fire Island chain, and I'd completely forgotten about these guys. Why? Yeah, they're badass, yeah, they're awesome, but they're also very rare. You'd find them in like some of the out of the way places and they suddenly pop up out of the earth and ambush you, knock your entire team down, and could be a real threat at the original balance of the game back at launch. So then I got to the point of shooting this series where we're going back through Guild Wars 1, you guys haven't quite seen yet, and I saw the fireworms and I thought, oh my god, this would be so amazing to be in this next patch, but they were rare. I wonder whether ArenaNet will do it, and boom, here it is on the trailer. Let's watch that animation again, alright, because look at how cool this is. It's an animation we've seen so many times before. Oh, yeah, and he's only on screen for like half a second or so. It's excellent. There are some other things maybe we can wonder about on this one, like whether we have some new abilities or they really are just going to copy-paste. And what do I mean there? Well, at the release of Guild Wars 2, we had lots of little worms, but they did a big one, and that was out in Caledon Forest, near the entrance to Twilight Arbor, the dungeon, and it was a world boss, and he was very exciting, and he had these cool, like, different animations. We also had the one in the Norn starter area, but both of these bosses generally kept a lot of the shared animations between themselves, and then when they released the really difficult world boss Triple Trouble, really they just took the same assets again and the same animations and things again, but souped them up and put slightly new mechanics on them, but visually the worm was very, very, very similar. But the thing that we haven't seen is the Jormungandr, I believe his name is, the very first worm you kill as a Norn. This worm here has kind of a sweeping attack where he rolls his head around in the area really slowly and grabs everyone, and I don't think we've seen that be used anywhere else in game. So will our friend the fireworm here do that? I don't know. Also, check out the background, right? You've got these cool stacked up rocks that seem really precarious. We're obviously going to have dynamic events and things here. Is it too much to think about some weird destructible environment where that might fall down? Okay, it probably is. And the last weird thing of note is there's actually a cursor on screen. And that's a bit of a mistake, I guess, on their part. But the cursor also doesn't look like the regular Guild Wars 2 in-game cursor, as far as I remember. I think the real one has sort of an outline. That's kind of interesting. I wonder if it's something to do with their trailer making tools. I got no idea. Anyway, flame worms, absolutely awesome. There's really not much lore to talk about with them. They're just these cool, badass things that you damn right would have survived all these years, no matter what other dragons and their minions have poked their noses in. They would have survived, and here they are. Far less interesting. We got a fire elemental. It makes sense, right? I mean, it's consistency, and it's smart for them to do. We've traditionally seen in TYRIA of the Guild Wars 2 that these fire elementals have existed in areas where there's been lava, and you get earth elementals where they've deemed it fairly earthy. Elementals have been all over the world, especially where the elements are, you know, quite volatile and reacting strongly. So it makes sense, right? Yeah, let's throw some fire elementals in there. Do note, guys, that there were no fire elementals like this in Guild Wars 1 in this location anywhere, but I think it works. For the world that we live in Guild Wars 2 these days, it works.
I hope any of us are still breathing.
And so we get a little bit of an audio cue there. Let's listen to that again.
After the coming battle, I hope any of us are still breathing.
So that I find quite curious, okay? After the coming battle, I hope any of us are still breathing. She mentions breathing. Obviously, this could just mean, oh, I hope we're alive at the end. It's weird that they didn't just say, oh, I hope we survive this. They actually say, I hope any of us are still breathing. You know, a really interesting angle I'd like to see them go now that we're fully going into this dragon story, right? Like with Prime Orders, I'd love to see smoke and ash and these ideas of suffocating being a bit of a thing, like one of his tools to sow and reap destruction. Because it shouldn't just all be about fire, 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 fire. It should also be from that, which is, as far as I'm aware, in the real world, the more deadly component of, say, a house fire and stuff. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into that a bit much. Let's go to the next shot. This next shot's really good. We're actually going to play this at a very slow speed here, because it moves very, very fast. So here we go. We're going to come up the mountain here, and then we're going to be revealed, and the music is kicking into a crescendo here. We're going to reveal this skull-spitting lava down. So we actually heard this last week that these skulls might be a little bit more of a thing coming back. We've got not just the main skull here, but a second one. These, again, I've talked about this last week. They're a really interesting component of the Fire Island chains, where these faces built into the rocks. And they were never explained in Guild Wars 1. Nobody really saw an explanation from them in Guild Wars 1. It was just like it's supposed to be an evil, barren, scary-looking landscape. And, well, they're back in Guild Wars 2. Is it just going to be to make the landscape look evil and barren and scary again? Or are they going to go a little bit deeper this time? I do think that Guild Wars 2 tends to go deeper than, especially Prophecies did, with random props and things and assets in the environment. So, who knows? But this is a very, very, very fast shot. We start at the bottom of the lava pool down here. I don't think there's anything sneaky hidden in here. And we come up. That's moving at about quarter of the speed that we normally would be. So yeah, and then we've got the skull itself. Reminds me a little bit of the Grey Ooh as well from Timberline at the release of the game. And so there we go. The temperature in TYRIA is rising, being the next tech shot. This is weird because you kind of think, oh, it's all about the Fire Island chain. It's all localized to the Fire Island chain, Fire Island chain, Fire Island chain. But then it's like, oh no, really all of TYRIA might be affected by this. I'm curious how they'll do that, because I think since the destruction of Lion's Arch stuff, they're going to be hesitant to just destroy massive areas of the world. A lot of people didn't even like that they did that in the end, as edgy and cool as it was. So I wonder what effects we'll see elsewhere, probably through stuff like current events, by the way, which have been doing very well with this. Finally, a destroyer. Not too much to pick out in the background of this shot, except that we can see it's kind of night, I guess. But this destroyer, sadly, as far as I can see, is just a regular destroyer. If there was ever a time for them to expand on what Primordus's minions are, it should have been now, right? If you guys watched the channel recently, we did a video. You can click the link on the screen right now if you want to check it out. We did a video on the movement of the world, which talked about some of the original lore that was setting up Guild Wars 2. And way back then, it seemed to suggest that Primordus's minions weren't necessarily just destroyers. That destroyers were more a thing to do with the Great Destroyer, and Primordus could have had his own host. And yet in Guild Wars 2, all we've ever seen are destroyers associated with him. So if we're going into let's fight Primordus now mode, you'd hope that they'd start doing this, but I mean, I get it's quite hard to make lots of new types of enemies. There are a lot of enemies. I'd still like to see the fireworms, great, but I still want to see hydras. I still want to see some of these other creatures. There were some really weird shambling undead that used to exist on the Fire Island chain as well. And I'd love to see that stuff. So also new types of destroyers. I guess it's forgivable if there's not one right here, right? Like, you guys aren't going to complain about that too bad. Let's move on. We get a Skrit, and he's actually pretty cool looking. All right. So I've talked a lot about the Skrit this week. I've talked a lot about how I don't really think the Skrit are fitting for the Fire Island chain in any respect. But here we're actually seeing they are full-on pirate Skrit, and they do look pretty cool. And I do hope, so the idea is that there could be a lot of Skrit together so they're intelligent enough to survive in these lands. If they're all pirates, I doubt they formed a king and a queen like we saw the Skrit of Skritsburg did. Or other Skrit in different areas. So I wonder how these guys operate. We could be seeing a whole new facet to them. I'm still not sold on it, guys. I've had a lot of people saying, oh no, the Skrit are amazing. They're so cute and lovely. Right, I've heard a lot of that. I'm still not fully sold on it, but he does look cool here. I find this a bit curious, the little thing on his ear that looks like it's straight out of, you know, Poundland in 2010. But, yeah, the Skrit, okay? They're piratey, they look cool, I'm wondering what they're doing there. Pushing the pirate theme as well is important to me because I kind of view that as one of the core themes that original Guild Wars 2 was trying to push. There was a lot of nautical-based stuff, a lot. But I only ever scratched at the surface of it in a lot of cases, and it could have done so much better. So if they keep that going, I don't know, I like the cohesiveness of that, shall we say. And he swings. Here we get another creature. What is this, a rolling devil, a smoke scale? One of those, right? I'm pretty sure we've seen these before. What's really interesting to me about this shot, though, isn't the creature we're looking at, which I'm pretty sure isn't new. It's actually the ground. Look, there's actually life here. There's plants and things. And you might think, well, that's really weird. That's not right, right? Like the Fire Island chain's supposed to be all dead and inhospitable. Well, this, and there's a rabbit hole that I have to skirt around here to be careful of. This actually does have a little bit of precedent as far as I remember, okay? So on the second mission, Abaddon's Mouth, that you do when you're on the Fire Island chain back in the first game, there's a bonus where you find a spirit who had been released by the Bloodstone and kind of can't find peace. Her name's Leah Stone. She's a ghost on the Fire Island chain. Now, we already saw in the first update that they were doing a lot of stuff about these ghosts. People that were released here on the Fire Island chain all ended up going back to Bloodstone Fen anyway, like they were bound there, and it's going to be really interesting if this patch deals with it. But in that bonus in GW1, she actually says, look, help me find peace. Let me take me to this little island, this small place on the Fire Island chain that reminds me of home. And it's, as far as I remember, it's got a little bit of plant life there. So is that what we're seeing? If that is what we're seeing, then that pinpoints this map as where actually we could be. Maybe it's not just near the Ember Light camp from the previous game. Maybe it's actually some of that northwesterly corner style area. Or the Ring of Fire Islands have changed too much for that to be the same area. But it did make me think about that character and that old bonus, Leah Stone, who wanted to be reminded of home. Specifically, by the way, this is the rabbit hole. She wanted to be reminded of Loamhurst, which is where she grew up. And Loamhurst is not a village we can access in Guild Wars 2 yet, but was confirmed to be in the unimplemented map north of Divinity's Reach called Lake Doric. Oh, Lake Doric next, guys. Well, we'll see. But great shot, right? Like, a little bit of plant life. There is a bit of precedent. Next shot, this one's beautiful as far as the background's concerned. It actually looks like we're inside a volcano here. And funny enough, those of you guys years ago might have seen, I did a Let's Play on a game called Azuric, right? Zurich Rise of Parathia, an old Xbox original game. And there's a moment where you go to a place called the Fire Realm in that game where you run into a room that looked, in my memory, a little bit like this, and there's a bridge like this, and then you jump and you have to glide across as these fire things are falling, and then you get to the other side. This room reminds me of that so much. That was the first thing it screamed to me when I first saw it. We got to destroy a harpy here, rising out of the water, the lava, sorry, and obviously that's important because how does Prime Mortis actually make his minions? Out of rock and molten lava. That is where they come from. So we're actually seeing the birth of one here, and that could be one of the stories for one of the hearts that maybe we've got going on in this map, or some of the events or something, sort of that this is a generator of destroyers and we're going to try and shut it down, because that's going to have to be a thing, right? Like if we're going into this story of how to fight this Elder Dragon, one of the questions is how do we cut off his supply of creatures that he can wield, and that would be a logical thing to start diving into, where they come from. And here, I think we're actually seeing an outside shot of that same volcano. You'll notice a lot of verticality again here, by the way. You'll notice lens flare and a bit of grid on the screen again, by the way. But yeah, I believe that what we were looking at a second ago was inside this building, this volcano here in the caldera of it. Is this Abaddon's mouth? Is another question. I don't think so. So Abaddon's mouth was the largest volcano on TYRIA, the largest volcano anywhere, as far as I remember. There aren't many significant volcanoes that have been written about in the lore. You've got Mount Hrangmere, where the Char first found the Titans, but isn't on the Fire Island chain. You've got a couple. That's where the Citadel of Flame is in Guild Wars 2, by the way, now. But the biggest one, as far as I understand, was Abaddon's Mouth. That is the one that has the Bloodstone chunk in the middle of it. That's where the door to Abaddon's realm, the Realm of Torment, or now the Redeemed Realm, is. That's where the Door of Kamali was. That's where we killed the Undying Lich. That's where all the stuff happened, and it eventually erupted at the end of Guild Wars 1. Is this it, then? That's the question. I don't think so. I think maybe it's just because it looks a bit small. Maybe we don't even have a very good sense of perspective here, anyway. But I think that maybe they'll save that for a later map in the Fire Island chain, because, again, I don't think we'll get the entire Fire Island chain in a single map. There's enough space there for 2, even 3, if they're liberal enough with the amount of watery areas around the outside, and I think they should be. But yeah, it looks cool anyway, and I'm sure it'll be a central fixture of this map. It seems to be genuinely seriously erupting up there, which is cool. Another shot towards the top. We got the skulls here. They're filling with lava, leaking down. And there's not too much to say. Finally, will we be consumed by the flames? I found we quite interesting there. Don't they usually use a different tense for the trailers? Anyway, will we be consumed by the flames? We get a big boss, and this looks again like an existing variety of destroyer, but I'm not sure actually. Maybe I should take back what I said earlier. Is this a new variety of destroyer? He's got kind of this cool, like, frilly stuff in the back there. Ah, look at him. He looks better. He's got no face. Oh, he looks intimidating. Probably some big boss on the map. Whether there'll be, like, one big meta that focuses entirely around one thing and one boss, I don't know. They might go more of a Bloodstone Fen route where there's lots of little events and metas rolling at the same time because of the reception to that other style that we saw wasn't so great with the Heart of Thorns core maps. But yeah, this guy looks badass. Is going to be some big moment. Here we get another great shot of, first of all, a guy gliding with the fractal glider, obviously, suggesting this is the kind of thing we'll be able to do. But look at the background on this one, guys. Look at these little things here, okay? These are really interesting. Why? This, guys, is our first shot of a Masat ruin. Yeah, so, well, and I guess the entire complex overall. So, what you're looking at, okay, are obsidian, black, jade, whatever structures. I know they don't look jade, but there was a lot of Masat stuff in the first game that was called jade, and it didn't look jade. This is the exact same color. What you'll probably find is these, like, ripple and shine as you walk around them. This looks like the ruins of some of the old Masat fortifications that they built to defend Abaddon's Mouth. I talked about this earlier in the week, that this is the kind of stuff I would love to see. What I'm expecting is we can explore these little ruins and we'll find cool notes and clues as to their history and their purpose there beyond what we already know, or just to catch up Guild Wars 2 players to understand those old Guild Wars 1 stories. And look at specifically how you've got the ruins, right? But then these pillars, these kind of magically infused obsidian pillars, they still look fine. Really kind of showing you how strong this material was. They had an entire wall built out of this stuff. And what does that suggest? If this stuff is still fine, like these various little flecks here, maybe the Onyx Gate, which is that wall, still stands in Guild Wars 2. How phenomenal would that be? That would blow my mind. It would blow my mind. Okay, cool. Next crazy shot. And this feels completely left field, but I think it's actually really good. Is a Karka. Alright, so those who may not remember, very shortly after Guild Wars 2's release, I guess the devs were like, all right, what do? We want to expand the game. We don't want it to be about any kind of core stories or anything in case we sort of screw it up. We want to find our feet. Let's just add something new somewhere, okay? And so they came up with this thing called The Lost Shores. This was just after the first Halloween update, which they hit out of the park for. And in The Lost Shores, we got to go to a new island that had suddenly appeared out of nowhere in the Sea of Sorrows, and it totally broke lore, and it was totally inconsequential to everything else. But on this island, they established this idea of these guys, the Karka. Now, the Karka are creatures from the deep sea who have supposedly been pushed to surface areas, probably because of the activities of the deep sea dragon, and they had been antagonized because of Kanak and because of the effects of the activities of the consortium and so forth, and eventually they got aggressive towards Lion's Arch, queuing us, the player characters, into the story. The problem with the Karka, though, is that they got dumped into this universe. They got dumped into the lore in that like one update or a handful of updates across the entirety of the game, and they've never really interacted with anything anywhere else. Just like the Lost Shores themselves were random islands they threw out into the middle of the area that was supposed to just be water. And to me, from a lore perspective, okay, a lot of people have different reasons to hate the Karka, but forever from a lore perspective, I have hated the Karka because they felt so shoddily dumped in, right? They didn't integrate anywhere else. You're lucky to get a bit of a look in with Karka hatchlings and stuff in Lion's Arch, but anywhere else in the entire story, they're nowhere. At least with stuff like the Lagos and stuff, they felt like they were integrated a bit more, and it felt like the mystery was a selling part of them. For the Karka, that wasn't exactly true. And a lot of players got on the wrong side of the Karka as well, because mechanically they weren't too fun to fight either. Our first experience of them was mired by issues with lag and culling, and they were one-shotting people and overscaling, and they were annoyingly tanky. They had this interesting mechanic where you killed them and then they'd just break their armor and then they'd keep going, and then that would frustrate people. So Karka have had a lot of reasons to be on people's bad sides before, but for me it's always been about the lore, and it's always been about how they just felt dumped in there. So you might think, oh my god, okay, there's a Karka in this next update. Karka on the Fire Island chain. I must hate that. Well, actually, I don't. I actually really like that, because this actually starts to fix the issue. The Karka, now that they're also on the Fire Island chain, it makes perfect sense that they'd be on the Fire Island chain, right? If they've been pushed out of the unending ocean, which, as you can see on this map here, is to the southwest of where we eventually saw them, they would have passed through the Fire Island chain. And why wouldn't they have stopped and gone to live on the Fire Island chain for a little while there? It's funny as well, there was actually a dev post from a guy called Matthew Medina who did a really interesting like lore bestiary note thing about the Karka too, showing he'd been thinking about them recently. And I think that may be one of the reasons why we've got it here, because it makes sense in the story, and now they're actually starting to feel like a real part of TYRIA. And even better than that, okay, the Karka are tough bastards, okay? I don't think anyone's going to deny that. They are grotesque. They are exactly the kind of mammoth, dangerous creature that actually could reasonably survive on the Fire Island chain. These aren't fuzzy little cutesy comic relief rodents. These are badasses with thick ass shells, and I can see them there. I can see them on the Fire Island chain, and there's a really interesting juxtaposition too between the very fiery nature of the current content and these things very much associated with the water dragon. So, or, you know, not of the water dragon, but their stories tie into it. So I'm game for it. I like it. I didn't expect it. It blew my mind when I saw it on the trailer, and I like the inclusion of the Karka. I'm curious to see what you guys think about that one. Funnily, they still seem to have a splash animation at their feet, even though there was no water there. And this is one of the last shots now, guys. We've got an Asura character. This Asura character could actually not be a player character or something. This may be related to a character we're hearing about on the official website right now, some lore posts I'll talk about at some point in the future. But in the background, we have a monster. Now, a lot of people online, their first reaction to this was, oh my god, it's the mouth of Morgemoth! Oh! It's not the mouth of Morgemoth, guys. The mouth of Morgemoth has been defeated. I mean, it kind of makes sense that it was close-ish, and it keeps respawning, even though it's maybe... But I'm pretty sure it's not the mouth of Morgemoth. What this actually is this is a stonehead. It's not a Mordrum stonehead, as far as I understand. It's just a regular stonehead, and it's a total coincidence that this guy's face looks a lot like the mouth of Morgemoth's face. I guess it's just their choice to zoom in as much as they did. And stoneheads, again, I think are very fitting creatures to have been on the Fire Island chain, even though we never saw them in the previous game. Next shot, we've got a nice long lava fall with the skull again. I mean, they're zooming in on the skull so much. Does that mean there's going to be a bit more? I don't know. But finally, we get the title of the patch. It's Rising Flames. So, some people like the idea of Episode 1 being called Out of the Shadows and Episode 2 being called Into the Frying Pan. But instead they've gone with Rising Flames, which is probably a little bit smarter. September 20th, yeah, a week away, guys.
I didn't think we'd be dealing with another dragon so soon.
And it ends on that cheesy, lovely dialogue there. I never thought we'd be dealing with another dragon so soon. The thing with that line, by the way, that might seem a bit out of place and stupid, but really I think what they're trying to do is that they've got, it's like a meta comment, right? Like from the devs. It's kind of like, listen, guys, the living world can do big story. We're fighting a dragon now in the living world. You don't have to wait for expansions for these big moments. It's there in the living world. These are key parts of the story. Guild Wars 2 is not a game where we're going to have boom bust on our expansion model. You're not just going to come in, play for a week, and then leave, and then come in 2 years later, play for a week, and then leave, and be done with it. You really do want to stick about and experience this story, because this is integral to the next expansion. It's integral to everything. This is the story. We are fighting a dragon now. And I think that's probably what they're going for, something like that, right? Like, so yeah. My only complaint with this trailer, which by the way, some people are saying is one of the best ones they ever did, when you watch it all in sequence, you got all the music and so forth, my only complaint is that there's no Hydra in it. I really want the Hydra to be in this patch. The Hydra was so cool. And it's not just the fact that the Hydra were cool, okay? But there's something else too. The Hydra existed in a couple of places in Guild Wars 1, very few. But one was the Fire Island Chain and the other one was the Crystal Desert, okay? So if there were Hydra in this patch, Rising Flames, on the Fire Island Chain, where they should be, according to the lore, if there were Hydra there, that would also suggest that the devs might have been happy to make them because they know they can use them again in the Crystal Desert, which may be the next expansion, and we could have done that deeper speculation, but there's no Hydra, so I don't know. What does that mean? Probably nothing. But there you go, guys. That is the trailer for Rising Flames. Hope you caught a couple of things that maybe you never saw for yourself when the trailer first came out. I'm very excited. The channel will be aflush with videos as we roll through these next 7 days. It will go by in an instant, and then we'll be there exploring these awesome locations. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed our half-an-hour discussion about a 50-second trailer. Keep an eye out. In just a second, there'll be a link to the previous video we did on this next update when they revealed it in the first place. There could be a lot of details there you might have missed. And I'll be back for more next time. See you later, everybody. The speculation and hype for the idea of the Fire Island Chain was increasing because of current events. Current events I haven't talked about on the channel, but there was an NPC who started in Frostgorge Sound and slowly over the days has been moving in a southwesterly direction, seemingly headed straight for the Fire Island Chain. And right on the back of this came confirmation that was happening. So the place specifically that we're going to is called Ember Bay. And there was no such area named this in Guild Wars 1, perhaps in some really